So I told you before that LACERA is going to issue you one paycheck a month, every month for as long as you live. But one of the biggest questions is, what do you think? How much? Yes, how much is this going to be? Is it going to be a little paycheck or is it going to be a big paycheck? Let me tell you about the benefit formula that LACERA uses to determine how big that retirement check is going to be. I'll tell you the 3 factors that come into play, and that way you will know what you can do to make sure that you maximize that check. You make it as big as you possibly can, right? Age. Say it with me, age. Age is actually the most important factor when it comes to calculating your retirement benefit. You might have 30 years of service, but if you're really, really young when you retire, your retirement check is not going to be that big. And why is that? What do you think? Why is it that if you retire older, we give you a bigger retirement check compared to if you retire younger? Kind of, yeah, when we think about it. When you think about it, a person who retires, let's compare a person who retires at 55 versus 65, right? That 55-year-old, hypothetically, they're going to collect 10 more years worth of payments than the 65-year-old is going to. We're still going to pay them for the rest of their lives, but we shrink the amount that the 55-year-old will get because we expect they're going to get a lot more payments out of this. The older you are when you retire, the bigger that retirement check is going to be for you, right? So what can you do to increase your age? To increase your age. You can wait. That's the only thing you can do. All you can do to increase your age is to wait. You have to wait until you pass a birthday.
You can buy years.
You can't, well, you can buy years, but you can't buy age. There's nothing you can do for age except for wait. So, and that's why, yeah, that's one of the things that, one of the pieces of information that's floating out there. Oh, I can buy age. No, you actually can't buy age. The only way you can increase your age is by waiting, right? The next factor we look at are the years and months of service credit. So say service credit with me. Service credit. So what's the first one? Age. Second one is service credit. Service credit is a way we count how long you've been working for the county. And for our Plan E members, E is non-contributory, as long as you have any sort of county earnings, or if you're on long-term disability or getting temporary disability benefits from workers' comp through the county, then you get service credit, right? Plan E members, you don't pay a contribution, you just have earnings, and that's how you get your service credit. For Plan D members, A, B, C, and D members, our contributory plan members, you have to work and have enough county earnings to pay your contribution. And your contribution is a percentage of your paycheck. Remember, we talked about that. So when you see the LACERA deduction coming out, that's paying for your service credit. And that helps you increase the number of years and months that you've been working with the county. And if you had to guess, if all other factors were exactly the same, you had 2 people the same age, same salary, same job, maybe they're twins even, and one of them has been working for the county for 10 years and another one's been working for the county for 30 years, who do you think is going to have the bigger retirement check? If all other factors are the same, the person with more service credit, because there is some justice in this world, right? So the more service credit you have, the bigger your retirement check is going to be. Now, when it comes to service credit, we'll talk about what you could do to increase your service, but another way you could do it is keep on working. As long as you keep on working, you keep adding to your service credit. And then the final factor that we use to determine your retirement benefits is final compensation. Say final compensation with me. Final compensation. Now, final compensation is just a fancy word for your average salary. For plans A, B, C, and D, we use a 12-month average. So each month, your salary information gets reported to LACERA, actually each half month now since we're in the EHR system. So we get that salary reported to LACERA through the payroll system, auditor controller. They report those salaries to us on a monthly basis, half-monthly basis. And when you go to retire, we have all of that information already. We're looking at the 12 highest consecutive months of earnings that you have that are considered pensionable. Now, there are certain earnings that are not considered pensionable. One of them is overtime. Okay. So in order to increase your retirement benefit, do you work a lot of overtime? No. You can work a lot of overtime. That's fine if you want to do it. It's not going to impact your LACERA retirement at all. Now for our Plan E members, again, different plan, different rules. We use a 3-year average salary. So it doesn't mean that it has to be the last 3 years or consecutive 3 years. We're just looking at 3 12-month chunks of salaries. And we're going to use that to figure out your average salary. Now what LACERA is going to do is pay you a percentage of that average salary based on your age at retirement and based on how much service credit you have in your plan. So those are the 3 factors: age, say it, age at retirement, right? Service credit, and final compensation, right? So when it comes to your final compensation, of course your base salary is going to be included in that. So as long as you get raises, maybe step raises or promotions, and you're working your way up the ladder, you're going to see that amount increase with time. But you might not realize that there are some other earnings that get counted as well. If you started working with the county prior to 1996, there's a part of the money that the county pays you or gives to you to spend on medical benefits. That's what they call the cafeteria plan. So you might be under choices or options, or maybe you're even flex or mega flex. Every October you get that open enrollment packet, and you have to choose how to spend that chunk of money that the county gives you for medical benefits. For people who started with the county prior to 1996, part of that money gets counted towards your salaries for retirement purposes. Unless you happen to be one of those mega flex individuals who signed the waiver saying, no, I don't want it. Just give me the cash, I don't want it to be pensionable. So there aren't that many people who do that. But if you want more information about that, again, in this little supplemental packet, I believe it's the third page of the packet, there's a percentage, well, actually not a percentage, there's a fixed dollar figure for most people, $244 per month or $122 per half month that gets to count towards your pension. In fact, if you look at the new pay stubs, the EHR pay stubs, you'll see a cafeteria plan amount. For most people, it's going to be $122 every pay stub. So no matter if you use up all of your cafeteria plan earnings, maybe you spend all of the money the county gives you for medical. If you started before 1996, you probably still have that $122 that gets to count towards your pension. Again, for people under flex, is anyone here flex or mega flex? No, you guys are all options? Options? Oh, okay. Choices, options, one of those two. Okay, so for choices and options, basically you're looking at $122 per paycheck or $244 per month that gets to count towards your pension, but only for those people who started before 1996. If you started after 1996 like me, nope, we don't get it, okay? Other things that get to count towards your average salary. Now you might think that there's not a whole lot you could do to impact your average, but really if you wanted to, you can increase your average salary by doing what we call buybacks. How many of you have done a sick buyback? How many of you don't know what a sick buyback is? No? Okay. Well, a sick buyback, for your information, if you don't use your sick time for the first half of the year, from January 1st to June 30th, if you don't use any sick time or any personal sick time, you are allowed to sell back 3 days of sick time to the county. The county takes that time off the books, they pay you the money, it goes into your pocket, and it gets to count towards your salary for that month. So it's a way that impacts your average salary. It could help raise that. You could actually do it twice a year. So once for the first half of the year and once for the second half of the year. If you also go from July 1st to December 31st and you don't use any sick or personal sick time, again, you're allowed to sell back 3 more days to the county. So 6 days total you could sell back to the county, and it will get to count towards your average salary. For our Plan E members, you may want to think about doing this the last 3 years before you retire. For plans A, B, C, and D, you might think about doing it at least the last year prior to retirement. Because for most of us, our salaries are the highest right before we retire. However, if you happen to know that there was a time in your working career where you were receiving higher salaries at that time and then you voluntarily demoted yourself, maybe there's a period in the middle of your career where there are higher salaries. We'll use whatever the highest salaries are. But for most of us, it's going to be towards the end of our career. And we're not talking about going from January 1st to December 31st when it comes to your average salary. We're just looking at 12 consecutive months. So it could potentially be April from one year to March of the next year. Or it could be, you know, July to June.
July to June.
Yeah, it just depends on what the highest months are for your own retirement, okay? Now, are you guys allowed to do excess vacation buybacks? Yes? Okay, I'm seeing a couple of yeses, I'm seeing some no's. Okay, if you happen to have more than the allowable amount of vacation hours on the books at the time that the new year comes along, if you have over that amount, the county has to do what they call housekeeping. Basically, they have to buy back the number of hours that are over that limit. And if they buy back those hours, they are considered pensionable. Many county departments frown on doing this. They tell you, use your vacation time. Don't let it accumulate. You're going to get in trouble if you don't use this time. We hear kind of a use it or lose it kind of scenario. However, if the county department you work for, if they allow you to bank up those excess vacation hours, and if they're on the books at the time that the new year comes around, and if it's over the limit, then the county will buy those hours back from you, and it also gets to increase your average salary for retirement purposes. You could get up to 20 days, basically 160 hours of that time. And nobody here was in Megaflex, right? If you're shy and you just don't want to say, if you happen to be a person in Megaflex, you don't earn sick or vacation time, but every year you get 10 days of non-elective leave. If you get those 10 days and you don't use it, and then you get another 10 days the following year, and year after year you're just banking this time. If you have excess non-elective leave at the end of the year, again, the county buys whatever you have over the limit, they'll bring it down to the acceptable limits, and those excess non-elective leave hours get to count towards your pensionable salary as well. But overtime is not pensionable, and neither is termination pay. Do you guys know what termination pay is? Term pay? When you leave the county, regardless of whether you're retiring or you're just quitting the county, if you have time on the books, then the county is supposed to pay you for that time. That's what they call termination pay. Basically, if you have vacation hours on the books, they'll pay you all of that. If you have floating holidays on the books, they'll pay you all of that as well. If you have 100% sick time, they'll pay you 50 cents on the dollar for that time, up to a limit. So if you have 1,440 hours, they'll pay you 720 hours worth of sick time. But if you have more than 1,440 hours, they don't pay you whatever's over that limit. When you look at 65% time or 50% time, you actually don't get paid anything for that time. That's really just a safety net for you, just to make sure that if you get sick, you have some hours to depend upon. If you happen to have pre-86 sick on your pay stub, check with your payroll office. It seems to depend by item and it depends by department whether or not you get paid or what you get paid for that time. And if you have pre-1971 sick, then you'll get all of that paid out to you as well. If you have any overtime, you have non-elective leave or elective leave, all of that also gets paid out. Basically, the county cuts you a check when you leave the county and they say, here's all of that time that you had on the books. That is called termination pay. They give you a time certificate. And that time is not considered pensionable, or that amount is not considered pensionable. It doesn't help your LACERA retirement at all, but it is taxable. So keep in mind that if you just get a cut check out to you, get a check cut to you, yeah, that's right, the county is going to withhold about 1/3 of it in taxes, and you do have to pay the taxes for that time, so it might bump you up in terms of your tax status. LACERA doesn't give tax advice, but we encourage you to seek your own.
Now let's talk about how to read the final average compensation charts. Beginning on page 26 of the pre-retirement guide, there are charts which indicate what percentage of your final average compensation you will receive at retirement based on your age and years and months of service credit. The Plan A chart is on page 26, the Plan B chart is on page 27, and the Plan C and D chart is on page 28. Looking at the Plans C and D chart, let's see what a LACERA Plan D member who is age 60 with 25 years of service would be eligible to receive. As you can see, a 60-year-old Plan D member with 25 years of service would be eligible to receive 47.92% of his or her one-year final average compensation. If this same individual works 5 more years, we would move down diagonally on the chart as the member continues to earn both age and service credit. So 5 years later, at age 65, with 30 years of service, this member would be eligible to receive 72.97% of his or her one-year final average compensation. The Plan E final average compensation chart is on page 29 of the pre-retirement guide. So now, looking at the chart, a Plan E member who is age 60 with 25 years of service would be eligible for 30.05% of his or her 3-year final average compensation. If the same Plan E member works 5 more years, again going down diagonally on the chart, we see that he or she would be eligible to receive 60% of his or her 3-year final average compensation at age 65 with 30 years of service.